I said, we're going to jump around a little bit, okay? And one thing that we need to understand, that we need to get our hands around, is something called Moore's Law, okay? Has anyone ever heard of Moore's Law? Has anyone ever heard of Moore's Law? It's a famous law that was proposed by Gordon Moore, who was the CEO of Intel back in the late 60s, early 70s. And here's what the law states, okay? The law specifically states that the number of transistors per square inch on an integrated chip will double every 18 months. So what? What does that mean? So the number of transistors per square inch on an integrated chip, like an Intel chip, you guys know what I'm talking about, a processing chip. The number of transistors, which are kind of like the brains, it's like if your brains, the networking in your brain is doubled every 18 months. So what has that done? He said that is the case in the computer industry that isn't the case in any other industry. So what does that mean? What does that mean in the business world? So what? Okay, all right, I get it. But what were the results or the consequences of Moore's Law? Not that he came up with it, he just observed that this is happening. Not that he said, this is my law, you have to follow it. He observed that this happens in the computer industry. It doesn't happen in any other industry. What happens? What are the results of that as a business person? As a consumer, what's the result of that? What does that mean? Nothing? Sarah, you know something.
Everything's becoming more computerized. Like even things that weren't computerized will now be computerized.
Okay, and why? You're right, why?
Because there's more ability for the things to be.
There's more ability, okay? If you think about it, what it has done is the computer price performance ratio is changing exponentially. You know what I mean? Like, you know what exponential growth is? What's exponential growth? What's linear growth versus exponential growth? Do our bodies grow exponentially or linearly? Linearly, you get taller an inch, 2 inches. If it was exponential, how would we grow? Yeah, we'd double. Like next year, you'd be 12 feet. The year after that, you'd be 24. And the year after that, you'd be 48 feet, right? That's what exponential growth is. It's not linear. It's unbelievable exponential growth. And what Moore's Law says is because it doubles, doesn't just increase like by a percentage, like 5%, 10% every year. Every 18 months it doubles. What it has done is, if you look at this chart, this is the computer price performance ratio, and what kind of performance you can get, for the same dollar now as compared to 1980. Like 1984, it cost $3,923 for something now, the performance that costs a penny. So what it leads to, and that's what Sarah kind of said, is everything's becoming computerized. Why? Because computers are cheap, right? Okay, you guys might look at me as I'm very, very old. Okay, I know you might look at me that way. I don't feel that old, okay? But listen to this. I graduated from St. Francis College. I was the geekiest of the geeky, right? I was a math computer science major. I had a Commodore 64 in my house, all those kind of things. I programmed things when I was 12, 13. And I graduated college, okay? And I was, 22 years old? I'd never used email. I mean, think about that. I mean, I was into everything, and I'd never used email. And that's not so long ago. That's the growth that we have seen. Another story. I can remember, how much is a calculator now? How much is a calculator? Any kind. The cheapest kind you can find. What? Go ahead. Yeah, dollar store. Hell, they come in your Happy Meal sometimes, right? They say, oh, here's a calculator. We give them out at the School of Business. I can remember the first calculator I saw. The girl came in the school. I know you look at me as old, but it's not that old. Maybe 25 years ago. She came in, 30 years ago. But she came into school. Yeah, more than that. Came into school, and she had the first calculator I'd ever seen. And it was huge. It was like a damn brick, right? It was a brick. It plugged into the wall. It had you could put in 6 numbers. That's it. It had the big red letters. You know what I'm saying? And the only reason, her dad was like a surgeon or something like that. You know what I mean? Like she was the only one that had one. It was like unbelievable. Now, like you said, less than $1. They give them away in Happy Meals. Think about the growth of even something simple like that you guys are familiar with, like video games. The first video game I owned was Pong. You guys know what Pong is? Okay. Swear to you. My dad and mother said to the family, we had a family vote on this, I can still remember. We had 4 children in my family. They said, we can go to the beach this summer, or we can buy Pong. Guess what we did? We bought Pong, okay? And we were one of the first families on the street to have Pong. And it was a big thing. It was monstrosity. It was like this big, and all it had was 2 knobs on it, and it controlled it, hooked up to your TV. There was a paddle and a ball, and that's all there was. You know what you can play on Pong? Pong, period. There was no cartridges. You bought one game, one console, and it was Pong. And I can tell you, it's like, I got new friends because, hey, the Migos have Pong. People were coming to my house that never talked to me before, because they wanted to play Pong. And now think about the graphics and the processing, that you can buy at an Xbox, or I don't even know what the latest games are. What's the latest game, Malik? What's the latest hot game? Xbox 360, One? Xbox One? And think about it, a couple $100, right? It was a couple $100 in the 80s, and now think about the change that we have seen. So what Moore's Law has done is really, because it has followed that kind of growth, that exponential growth, it has, as Sarah said, everything is now computerized. Hell, we just saw a video of pushing a button that orders you, paper towels. And what they say the button was, how much did it cost? Free, because you have Amazon Prime and they want you to order paper towels, right? So it's amazing the thing that it's driven. Now, listen to this example. Okay, so the computer industry is unique in that it is really the only industry that has experienced this kind of growth. Think about the car industry. Same time frame, 1960s, 1970s. What did a late 1960, 1970 car look like? What did it look like? Mr. Myers, what did it look like? Basically. It had metal, right? How many tires did it have? 4. About how fast did it go?
40, 50.
Not more than that, right? I'm not talking 1904. It would go 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, right? What did it run on? Gas. How far did it go on gas? What's that?
Depends on the tank.
Depends on the tank, but maybe 200, 300, 400 miles, okay? How much did they cost then? Was it a significant investment? Maybe that's what I should say. Was it a significant investment? Even for someone to buy a car in 1970, was it a big portion of their income? It was, right? It was a big investment like it is now. The example they use, think about a car. It really hasn't changed. Yeah, there's nice gadgetries, but really the car is the same. If Moore's Law was applied to the automobile industry, listen to this. They say a car would be able to go from California to back in under a minute. You'd be able to power it with a thimbleful of gas, and it would be less than $1. Okay? If it went through the same, I'm talking about the same kind of exponential growth. So that's crazy. Think about that. That's crazy. The computer industry is unique in that facet. So what are the results of this? Things that you guys are very familiar with: YouTube, Facebook, Pandora, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Woo, Twitter, Foursquare. None prominent in 2005, just 10 years ago. Now some of these things are in your daily life, and that is because of Moore's Law. Because the computer industry, not because he formulated the law, but he observed the law and said, this is what's happening in the computer industry. So what do we get? We get more ubiquity. Computers are everywhere. More portability, more mobility, just better overall functionality. Okay. So there's some things in this chapter that I'm not going to cover. There's some things about why should you study MIS. Hopefully that becomes self-evident as you go through this class. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. So let's see. I did the 5-component framework. Very good. High tech versus low tech. Let's talk about the difference between information technology and information systems. Okay? A lot of times those two words are used synonymously. They're used as replaceable. Information technology versus information systems. The difference is information technology is basically the hardware, the software. It is like the the standard, the thing that came out of it. It's like GPS. It is like the technology is like near-field communication, GPS, Wi-Fi. Information systems are different. Why? Why are information systems different than technology? Technology is neat, but what is the big difference with information systems? Why is information systems different than technology? Let me put this back up here. Hardware, software, data, procedures, people. Why are they different? What do you think? The methodologies, the technologies, the hardware, the innovation, that's all information technology. What's different about information systems?
They studied how people use the system instead of just doing the hardware.
Well, one thing I like what you said is how people use the systems, not just the hardware, right? Because an information system, as we learned, consists of these 5 components: hardware, software, data, procedures, and people. If we think about the technology itself, we're really only talking about this side, right? So one of the things you often hear, and this is important to a business professional, you can't buy an information system. You can buy IT, but you can't buy an information system. Why can't you buy an information system? Why can't you buy an information? You can buy information technology, but you can't buy IS. Why not? Sarah?
We have to develop the information system through the technology.
Very good. An information system takes the technology and applies it to a business process, right? You need procedures. You need to train the people on how to use it. You can't just buy people, right? Not in this day and age. You can't buy people, right? You just can't put knowledge in someone's head. You have to go through the process. So you need people to execute the procedures to employ new information technology. Use of new system requires training, overcome employees' resistance, which we call organizational inertia. It requires managing employees as they use the new system, okay? Not just putting it in, but maintaining the system and making sure everything is going well. So information technology is really products, methods, inventions, standards, okay? All those things, the hardware, the software, the methodologies, the Bluetooth, near-field communication, all those things. IT components equals hardware plus software plus data, but an information system is that plus procedures and people. So we're talking about the right-hand side as well as the left-hand side, okay? Let's talk a little bit about information. We already defined information at the first class. Information is data derived or knowledge derived from data where data represents recorded facts or figures. Some other things that we talk when we talk about information is it's a difference that makes a difference. We take all those transactions, we apply something to it, and now we know something. It's a difference that makes, we average it, we group it, we organize it, we summarize it. Let's talk about information, and let's talk about some characteristics that are important for information. First off, and these are important, first off, information needs to be accurate. There's a terminology there's an acronym, I should say, in the world of computer science, in the world of information systems. It says GIGO. Ever hear of GIGO? Ever worked in, what it stands for is garbage in, garbage out. And what that means is whatever you do to the data, if the data is bad in the first place, it doesn't matter how you summarize it, how you aggregate it, how you collect it, you're going to get garbage out. Same thing with the system. If the input is bad, it's likely the output isn't going to be any good. Garbage in, garbage out. So any kind of information that is not accurate, obviously, is not useful information. Information needs to be timely. Okay? Nothing is as useless as yesterday's newspaper, right? Information needs to be timely. It needs to be there for the purpose of making the decision. If I'm deciding on how many products to order for my store, I want last month's sales report, not 7 years ago, right? So information needs to be timely. It also needs to be relevant. Okay? It has to be relevant to the task on hand. So information is great, but if the information doesn't relate to the context or the subject you're trying to make a decision on, no good. Information needs to be just sufficient. What do you think I mean by just sufficient? What do you think it means by just sufficient? What do you think it means by just sufficient? Have you ever got too much information to make a decision? Okay. Information can be what we call, you think about it as like sand. It can be too coarse, C-O-A-R-S-E, or too fine. Okay. Too fine means it's at too low of a detail, right? Maybe I'm the regional manager of, I don't know, Apple, and I have all the individual transactions for all the accounts bought or all the iPhone purchases in the region. Well, that's too fine of detail for me to manage at the regional level. Or perhaps I'm at an Apple store, but I have the national sales data. That's too coarse for me to make any decisions. So data has to be just sufficient for the decision that I'm making. And finally, the last thing is it has to be worth its cost. There's a cost for information. We have to gather, we have to process it. The decision I make with the information better be worth more than the cost of processing it or coming up with the information. Okay, let's see. All right. So this is the stuff in Chapter 1. And as you can tell, I didn't go through everything in Chapter 1. We talked about what MIS is, which is important, and I added some things to it, management information systems. We talked about the 5-component model. That's very important. We're going to use that throughout the course. I want you to understand that: hardware, software, data, procedures, people. I want you to understand the symmetry of it. I want you to understand moving things from the people and procedure side to the hardware, software side is automation. I want you to understand question 4 and question 5. Question 4 has to do with the difference between IT and information systems. I want you to know what information is and what are the necessary characteristics. But there's some things in there about the importance of MIS, why should you study this course. You don't have to know those kind of things in Chapter 1, okay? So we got our feet wet a little bit with Chapter 1, added to it. Now I want to go to your assignment because that is due, the Friday assignment.